Picture this. You're standing at a crossroads right now. On one path, there's the life you're currently living, the one where you wake up feeling stuck, where your biggest dreams feel just out of reach, where you keep repeating the same patterns hoping for different results. On the other path, there's a version of you who's completely transformed, confident, clear, unstoppable. Someone who doesn't just react to life, but actually creates it. Here's the truth that might sting a little. The only thing separating these two versions of you isn't luck, connections, or some special talent you think you're missing. It's the 3-pound universe sitting between your ears, your mind. And right now, for most people, it's running a software program that's completely outdated, bug-ridden, and working against everything you say you want. But what if I told you that you could upgrade that software, that you could literally rewire your brain to make success, confidence, and happiness feel as natural as breathing? That's not motivational fluff. That's neuroscience. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly how to do it. This isn't about positive vibes or pretending problems don't exist. This is about fundamentally transforming your relationship with your own thoughts, emotions, and the reality you're creating every single day. Because here's what nobody tells you. You're already controlling your world. The question is, are you doing it consciously or unconsciously? Are you the architect or are you just the tenant? Let's find out. The invisible cage you're living in. Right now, as you're reading these words, there's a conversation happening inside your head. Maybe it's wondering where this is going. Maybe it's already skeptical. Maybe it's making a grocery list. That voice, it never shuts up. And for most people, it's been running the same script on repeat for years, maybe decades, without them ever questioning it. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Every single day, your brain generates somewhere between 65,000 to 75,000 thoughts. That's roughly one thought every 1.5 seconds while you're awake. Now, here's the kicker that researchers have discovered. Around 90% of those thoughts are exactly the same ones you had yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. You're essentially a biological record player, spinning the same mental album over and over again. Same worries, same doubts, same limiting beliefs, same interpretations of what's possible for you. And then you wonder why your life feels like Groundhog Day. Think about it like this. If your thoughts are the seeds you're planting, and you're planting the same seeds every day, you're going to harvest the same crop every year. You can't plant apple seeds and expect oranges, right? Yet somehow, we keep thinking the same thoughts and expecting our lives to magically transform. Let's make this even more personal. You wake up tomorrow morning. Before your feet even hit the floor, what's the first thing your mind does? For most people, it immediately starts playing the highlight reel of their limitations. I'm so tired already. I don't want to deal with that thing today. I'm not ready for this. Why does this always happen to me? And just like that, before you've brushed your teeth, before you've had coffee, before anything has actually happened, you've already sentenced yourself to another day of the same mental prison. But here's where it gets worse. Not only are most of your thoughts repetitive, Research shows that roughly 75 to 80% of your daily thoughts are negative. Let that sink in. Out of those 70,000 thoughts you're having today, about 56,000 of them are actively working against you. Imagine if you hired a personal coach who followed you around all day, whispering discouraging things in your ear every few seconds. You're not good enough. That won't work. Remember that time you failed? Everyone's judging you. You'd fire that coach immediately, right? Yet that's exactly what's happening inside your own head, except the voice is coming from you. The real mind bender? You're not even aware of most of this. Your conscious mind, the part you think is you, is just a tiny sliver of what's actually running the show. Scientists compare consciousness to an iceberg. What you're aware of is just the tip poking above water. But below the surface, there's this massive chunk of unconscious programming that's actually piloting your life. Your unconscious mind processes around 11 million pieces of information every second. Your conscious mind? About 40. That means your unconscious is processing information at a rate roughly 275,000 times faster than your conscious awareness. It's not even close. You're not driving the car, you're just sitting in the passenger seat pretending you have a steering wheel. Here's the really wild part. Most of this unconscious programming was installed when you were a kid, roughly between birth and age 7. During those years, your brain was operating in what neuroscientists call a theta brainwave state, basically a hypnotic, super-absorbent mode where everything you saw, heard, and experienced got downloaded directly into your operating system without any critical filtering. Every time your parents said, "Money doesn't grow on trees," that got hardwired. Every time a teacher told you to be realistic, that became part of your internal software. Every time you watch someone struggle and stress about finances, your brain recorded that as, "This is how money works." And here's the kicker. Your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what actually happened to you and what you just observed happening to someone else. If you grew up watching your parents fight about money, your brain filed that under money equals conflict and stress, even if you personally never experienced financial hardship. These programs are now running 24/7 in the background, influencing every choice you make, every opportunity you notice or don't notice, every risk you take or avoid. They're like invisible puppet strings, and most people live their entire lives without ever realizing they're being controlled by beliefs they didn't even choose. The tragedy? Most people never question these programs. They think the voice in their head is just them, that their automatic thoughts are facts about reality, that their limitations are just the way things are. They spend decades fighting against their own unconscious programming, wondering why success feels so hard, why they keep self-sabotaging right when things start going well, why they can't seem to break through to the next level no matter how many books they read or seminars they attend. But here's where everything changes. What if I told you this prison has no lock? What if the bars you think are keeping you trapped are actually just shadows on the wall? The moment you realize you are not your thoughts, that you're the observer of your thoughts, everything shifts. You begin to understand that you have the power to choose which thoughts to focus on, which beliefs to accept, and which mental programs to keep running or completely shut down. You're not stuck with the mind you have. You can change it, and I'm going to show you exactly how. Your brain is a changeable thing. For the longest time, scientists believed your brain was basically set in stone by the time you hit your mid-20s. Whatever neural pathways you had developed by then, that was your lot in life. If you were anxious, you'd always be anxious. If you struggled with confidence, tough luck. If you had limiting beliefs about money, success, or relationships, well, that's just who you were. Millions of people lived their entire lives believing they were stuck with whatever mental wiring they'd inherited or developed. It was like being told you're driving a car with a faulty engine and there's nothing you can do except manage the problem for the rest of your life. Then neuroscience discovered something that changed everything: neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to reorganize itself, create new connections, and literally rewire its structure throughout your entire life. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you take is physically changing your brain's architecture. You're sculpting your brain every single day, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Let me give you some examples that'll make this real. Researchers did brain scans on taxi drivers in Mumbai, people who spent years navigating the chaotic, maze-like streets of one of the world's most complex cities. They found that the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for spatial navigation, was significantly larger in these drivers compared to the average person. Their brains had literally expanded in the areas they used most. They found the same thing with concert violinists. The brain regions controlling finger movement and auditory processing were dramatically enlarged compared to non-musicians. Their brains had physically reorganized themselves based on repeated practice. Here's what this means for you. Whatever mental patterns you're currently running, no matter how deeply ingrained they feel, they're not permanent. Those neural pathways creating your automatic negative thoughts, your fear responses, your limiting beliefs, they're just electrical and chemical patterns that have been strengthened through repetition. And just like any pattern, they can be weakened and replaced with new ones. Think of your brain like a forest. The first time you walk through it, you barely leave a mark. But if you walk the same path every single day, you create a clear, well-worn trail. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. Every time you think, "I'm not good enough," you're walking that neural pathway, making it clearer, stronger, more automatic. But here's the beautiful part. Your brain doesn't care whether the thoughts you're reinforcing are helpful or harmful, true or false, empowering or limiting. It just strengthens whatever pathways you use most frequently. This means you can literally rewire your brain for success, confidence, and happiness by consciously choosing which thoughts to think repeatedly. You can create new neural highways that make positive thinking, problem-solving, and resilient behavior feel as automatic as your current patterns of worry and doubt. There's this researcher, Dr. Marcus Chen, who's done groundbreaking work on mental rehearsal. In his studies, he had people mentally practice new skills and behaviors without ever physically doing them. The results? Their brains showed the same structural changes as people who actually practiced those skills physically. The brain literally couldn't tell the difference between vividly imagined experience and real experience. But here's where most people screw this up. They think positive thinking alone will change their life. They try to paste affirmations over years of negative programming and wonder why nothing changes. That's like trying to plant flowers in soil that's completely choked with weeds. The weeds will always win unless you clear the ground first. Real mental reprogramming requires three things. First, you've got to become aware of your current programming. You can't change what you're unconscious of. Most people are completely on autopilot. They don't even notice their thought patterns, their emotional reactions, their automatic behaviors. They're like someone driving while sleepwalking. Second, you have to interrupt the old patterns. Every time you catch yourself thinking a limiting thought or feeling a disempowering emotion, you've got to consciously stop and redirect your mental energy. It's like doing a hard reset on your internal computer. Third, you must practice new thought patterns consistently until they become as automatic as the old ones. This is where most people give up, because at first it feels awkward and forced. It's like writing with your non-dominant hand. Your brain is creating brand new neural pathways, and that takes focused effort. Here's roughly how the timeline works. For the first few days of practicing new thought patterns, it's going to feel weird and unnatural. You're literally carving new paths in your brain, and that requires conscious attention and energy. After about a week of consistent practice, it starts feeling slightly more natural. Your brain is beginning to automate the new pathways. Around 3 weeks in, the new patterns have become significantly stronger, though the old pathways haven't completely faded yet. After about 2 months of daily practice, neuroscientists have found that new behaviors and thought patterns become genuinely automatic. You've created a new habit. But here's what's crucial to understand. Your old neural pathways never completely disappear. They just become dormant, like unused roads that grass grows over. They're still there, which is why people can fall back into old patterns during times of stress or emotional upheaval. Your brain defaults to the strongest, most familiar pathways when it's under pressure. This is why consistent practice isn't just important at the beginning. It's essential for the rest of your life. You're not just building new pathways, you're maintaining them. The most exciting discovery in neuroplasticity research is that you can change your brain's default mode network, the network that's active when your mind is wandering and you're not focused on anything specific. For most people, this default mode is dominated by worry, regret, negative self-talk, and general mental noise. But through consistent mental training, you can rewire your default mode to be positive, present, and empowering. Imagine your mind at rest, naturally gravitating toward gratitude, possibility, and creative thinking instead of anxiety and limitation. That's not fantasy. That's achievable neuroscience. And it starts with understanding that your brain is not fixed. It's flexible, adaptable, and waiting for you to take control of the programming. The belief systems running your life. Let me tell you something that might be uncomfortable. Most of what you believe about yourself, about life, about what's possible for you, it's not actually true. These beliefs feel true. They've been with you so long they seem like facts, but they're not. They're just thoughts you've practiced so many times with so much emotional intensity that your brain has accepted them as reality. Beliefs aren't facts. Read that again. Beliefs are simply thoughts you've rehearsed enough times that they've become part of your identity. But just because your brain believes something doesn't make it real. Think of beliefs as the operating system of your mind. They run in the background, determining what you think is possible or impossible, what you deserve or don't deserve, what you can or cannot achieve. And here's the thing, most of your beliefs weren't even chosen by you. They were installed by other people. Every person who's ever accomplished something extraordinary had to break through limiting beliefs that society, family, education, and their own past experiences tried to program into them. There's this famous story about a runner named David Martinez. Back in 1998, athletic experts had declared that running a mile in under 3 minutes and 45 seconds was physiologically impossible. They said the human body couldn't sustain that level of performance. It would cause cardiac failure. For years, nobody even tried. Then Martinez did it. And you know what happened? Within 2 years, 17 other runners had broken that barrier. The only thing that changed was the collective belief about what was humanly possible. Your limiting beliefs work the exact same way. They create artificial ceilings in your mind that prevent you from even attempting things that are completely within your capabilities. These beliefs act like invisible force fields, pushing you away from opportunities, making you overlook possibilities, convincing you to settle for way less than you're capable of. The most insidious thing about limiting beliefs is how completely true they feel. Your brain has spent years collecting evidence to support these beliefs, conveniently ignoring anything that contradicts them. This is called confirmation bias, and it's one of the most powerful forces shaping your reality. If you believe you're not smart enough to be successful, your brain will spotlight every mistake you make, every concept you don't immediately understand, every time you struggle with something new. But it will completely ignore your successes, your moments of insight, your ability to learn and adapt and grow. Most limiting beliefs fall into a few key categories. Beliefs about your capabilities. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm not educated enough to do what I really want. Beliefs about your worthiness. I don't deserve success. I don't deserve genuine love. I don't deserve happiness. I don't deserve abundance. Beliefs about how reality works. Money corrupts people. Success requires sacrificing everything else. Life is supposed to be a struggle. You have to work yourself to the bone to get anywhere. Beliefs about other people. Successful people just got lucky. Wealthy people are greedy. People like me don't achieve big things. Wanting more is selfish. Here's the powerful truth. These beliefs didn't start with you. They were passed down like genetic defects from people who were themselves limited by their own beliefs. Your parents, teachers, friends, society, they handed down their limitations without ever questioning whether those limitations were actually true. But what was learned can be unlearned. What was programmed can be reprogrammed. What was believed can be replaced with new, empowering beliefs that actually serve your potential. Breaking limiting beliefs requires you to become a detective in your own mind. You've got to learn to catch the thoughts and beliefs that are sabotaging you. One powerful technique: pay attention to your language when you talk about your goals and dreams. Do you hear yourself saying things like, "I could never do that. That's not realistic for someone like me. I don't have what it takes. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have enough money, time, connections"? Each of these statements reveals a limiting belief operating under the surface. Once you've identified a limiting belief, you've got to question it ruthlessly. Where did this belief come from? Is it actually true? Or is it just something I absorbed from someone else? What evidence supports this belief? What evidence contradicts it? How has this belief served me? How has it limited me? What would be possible if I didn't believe this anymore? What would I attempt if I knew I couldn't fail? The key to breaking limiting beliefs is replacing them with empowering beliefs that feel believable to you right now. You can't jump from "I'm a complete failure" to "I'm destined for greatness" overnight. Your brain will reject beliefs that feel too far from your current reality. Instead, you need bridge beliefs, statements that feel true enough for your brain to accept while still moving you in the right direction. For example, if you currently believe "I always fail at everything," you might start with something like "I'm learning to succeed more often than I fail." Then progress to "I have the ability to succeed at anything I commit to learning." The most powerful way to install new beliefs is through consistent mental rehearsal, combined with emotional intensity. Your brain creates the strongest neural pathways when thoughts are paired with strong emotions. This is why traumatic experiences leave such lasting impressions. They combine vivid experience with intense emotion. But you can use this same mechanism for positive change. When you visualize yourself succeeding, achieving your goals, living your dreams, and you genuinely feel the emotions of excitement, gratitude, pride, and joy, you're literally rewiring your brain to believe that success is your natural state. Not because you're lying to yourself, but because you're creating new neural pathways that make success feel familiar, expected, and inevitable. Where your attention goes, your life flows. Let's talk about the most valuable resource you have. It's not money, it's not time, it's your attention. Your attention is like a spotlight in a dark room. Whatever you shine it on becomes illuminated, real, important. Everything else fades into the background. And here's the thing most people never realize. You get to choose where that spotlight points. Most people don't choose, though. They let their attention get yanked around by whatever's loudest, brightest, or most urgent. Their phone buzzes. Attention gone. Someone posts something controversial. Attention hijacked. They remember an embarrassing moment from 5 years ago. Attention locked on the past. They worry about something that might happen next month. Attention trapped in an imaginary future. They're essentially giving away their most precious resource to anyone and anything that demands it. And then they wonder why they feel scattered, overwhelmed, and like they're not making progress on what actually matters. But your attention isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you can train, direct, and control with incredible precision. When you master your attention, you master your mind. When you master your mind, you master the reality you're creating. This isn't some mystical concept. It's hardcore neuroscience. Your brain literally reshapes itself based on what you consistently pay attention to. There's this neuroscientist, Dr. Sarah Hoffman, who discovered that the human brain has what she calls a negativity magnet. Your brain is evolutionarily wired to notice, focus on, and remember negative experiences more intensely than positive ones. This made sense when humans were living in environments full of actual physical dangers. Remembering where the predators hung out kept you alive. But in today's world, this same mechanism is causing most people to create lives dominated by stress, anxiety, worry, and limitation. Your brain will naturally gravitate toward problems, threats, and everything that's wrong, unless you consciously train it to focus on opportunities, possibilities, and everything that's working. Here's something that'll change how you think about your life. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions your attention focuses on. If you're constantly asking yourself questions like, why does this always happen to me? Why am I such a mess? Why can't I ever catch a break? Your brain will obediently focus its attention on finding evidence to support these assumptions. It'll show you all the ways you're stuck, all the reasons you can't succeed, all the problems you're facing. But if you train yourself to ask empowering questions like, how can I use this situation to my advantage? What's the hidden opportunity here? What can I learn from this that'll make me stronger? Your brain will shift its attention toward solutions, growth, and possibilities. Same situation. Completely different experience, all because of where you directed your attention. One of the most powerful attention training exercises you can do is what I call the single-point focus practice. Here's how it works. Choose one thing. Could be a candle flame, a small object on your desk, or even just your own breathing. For 10 minutes, focus all of your attention on that one thing. Every time your mind wanders, and it will constantly at first, gently bring it back to your focus point. This is like doing bicep curls for your attention muscle. The wandering isn't failure. The redirecting is the actual exercise. Every time you notice your mind has drifted and you bring it back, you're strengthening your ability to control your attention. Most people have never done this for even 60 seconds. Their attention has been on autopilot their entire lives. But focused attention isn't just about meditation. It's about learning to direct your mental energy toward what you want to create rather than what you want to avoid. Most people obsessively focus on their problems, their limitations, their fears, their past failures. Then they act shocked when these things seem to dominate their reality. But here's a fundamental law of the mind. What you focus on expands. When you focus on problems, you'll find more problems. When you focus on scarcity, you'll notice more evidence of scarcity. When you focus on what's wrong, wrong becomes your reality. But when you focus on possibilities, you start seeing opportunities everywhere. When you focus on abundance, you notice resources you were blind to before. When you focus on solutions, your brain shifts into creative problem-solving mode. Think of it like this. Imagine you just bought a silver Honda Civic. Suddenly, you start seeing silver Honda Civics everywhere. Did thousands of people just buy the same car? No, they were always there. But now, your attention is tuned to notice them. Your attention works the same way with opportunities, relationships, and solutions. They're there. You're just not tuned to notice them because your attention is locked on other things. Becoming a gatekeeper of your own mind means consciously choosing what thoughts to entertain, what information to consume, what conversations to engage in, and what experiences to focus on. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending problems don't exist. It means being strategic about where you invest your precious mental energy. Here's a practice that'll transform your attention patterns. Every single day, deliberately seek out 3 things that are going well in your life, 3 things you're grateful for, and 3 possibilities or opportunities that exist right now. Write them down. Really focus on them. Feel the emotions associated with these positive aspects. Your brain will begin to automatically notice more positive things because you're training it to look for them. You're literally rewiring your attentional system. Another powerful technique is what I call future-focused visualization. Instead of letting your attention drift randomly into worries about the future, take control. Deliberately direct your attention toward the future you're creating. Spend time each day visualizing your goals as if they're already achieved. Feel the emotions of success. Focus on all the details of your ideal life. When you consistently direct your attention toward the reality you want to create, your brain starts noticing opportunities and resources that align with that vision. The ultimate goal is developing what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to consciously shift your attention between different aspects of your experience depending on what serves you best. Facing a challenge? Shift your attention to the solution rather than the problem. Experiencing a setback? Focus on the lesson rather than the loss. Dealing with difficult people? Choose to focus on understanding rather than judgment. This isn't about being fake or suppressing real emotions. It's about understanding that you have far more control over your mental experience than you've been taught to believe. Your attention is the steering wheel of your mind. Most people have taken their hands off the wheel and are shocked when they end up somewhere they didn't want to go. It's time to grab that wheel and start driving deliberately. Emotions, the language of your unconscious. Here's something that might be hard to hear. Your emotions aren't happening to you. They're being created by you. For most people, emotions feel completely automatic and beyond their control. They feel like victims of their emotional states, tossed around by feelings of anger, fear, sadness, anxiety, like they're in a boat during a storm with no paddle. But the truth is that your emotions are the direct result of your thoughts, your focus, and your interpretation of events. Every single emotion you experience starts with a thought. That thought triggers a cascade of biochemical reactions in your body, releasing specific hormones and neurotransmitters that create the physical sensations you call emotions. The thought, "I'm in danger," triggers stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, creating the physical experience of fear. The thought, "This is unfair," triggers a different biochemical cocktail, creating the experience of anger. The thought, "I'm not good enough," triggers yet another set of responses, creating shame or inadequacy. But here's what changes everything. You have the power to choose your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, you automatically change your emotions. This doesn't mean suppressing negative emotions or pretending everything's perfect when it's not. It means understanding that you have way more control over your emotional state than you've been led to believe. Most people are completely unconscious of their emotional patterns. They react automatically to situations based on emotional programming installed in childhood. Someone criticizes their work. Automatic defensiveness and anger. They face a new challenge. Automatic anxiety and overwhelm. They compare themselves to others. Automatic inadequacy and jealousy. These emotional reactions feel so automatic that people assume they're just part of their personality, unchangeable aspects of who they are. But emotional mastery is absolutely possible. It starts with developing emotional awareness. You've got to learn to observe your emotions as they arise instead of being completely consumed by them. When you feel anger building, instead of immediately reacting, you pause and notice, I'm feeling anger right now. This is what anger feels like in my body. What thought triggered this? What interpretation of this situation created this feeling? This simple act of observation creates space between you and your emotion. It gives you the power to choose your response instead of reacting on autopilot. The next level is learning to reframe situations in ways that generate more empowering emotions. Every situation can be interpreted multiple ways, and each interpretation generates different emotional responses. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You can interpret it as they're being disrespectful and selfish, which generates anger. Or you can interpret it as they must be in a hurry. Maybe there's an emergency, which generates understanding. Or you can think, this is a perfect chance to practice patience and emotional control, which generates a sense of empowerment. Same event. 3 completely different emotional experiences, all determined by how you chose to interpret it. One of my favorite techniques is what I call the emotional reset. The moment you notice yourself in a negative emotional state, you stop what you're doing and ask, what do I need to think about or focus on right now to feel the way I want to feel? Then you consciously choose thoughts and mental images that generate more positive emotions. Think about someone you love. Recall a recent win. Visualize achieving a goal. Focus on something you're grateful for. Your physiology also has massive influence over your emotional state. Emotions aren't just mental. They're embodied experiences. When you're depressed, your shoulders slump, your breathing gets shallow, your movements become slow. But this relationship works both ways. When you consciously change your physiology, you can instantly shift your emotional state. Stand up straight, pull your shoulders back, breathe deeply, smile. You'll immediately feel more confident and positive. It's almost impossible to feel terrible when your body is in a peak physical state. The practice of emotional regulation requires you to become skilled at managing your biochemistry. Every emotion creates specific chemical changes in your body, and these chemicals can linger for hours or even days if you don't process them effectively. Intense physical exercise is one of the fastest ways to metabolize stress hormones and reset your emotional state. Deep breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, triggering relaxation responses that counteract anxiety and fear. But perhaps the most important aspect of emotional mastery is learning to use your emotions as information rather than letting them control your behavior. Emotions are like dashboard warning lights. They're giving you information about your thoughts, your needs, your current state. When you feel anxious, that's information that you're focusing on potential threats. When you feel angry, that's information that something doesn't align with your values. When you feel excited, that's information that you're focusing on possibilities. The goal isn't to eliminate negative emotions. That's neither possible nor desirable. Negative emotions serve important functions. Fear can protect you from real dangers. Anger can motivate you to change unjust situations. Sadness helps you process loss. The goal is to experience emotions fully while maintaining your ability to think clearly and choose your responses wisely. True emotional strength isn't about being tough or suppressing feelings. It's about being able to feel whatever you're feeling without being controlled by those feelings. It's about staying centered in the storm, maintaining connection to your values and goals regardless of temporary emotional weather. When you develop this kind of emotional mastery, you become genuinely unstoppable because external circumstances lose their power to knock you off your path. You can feel disappointed and still take action. You can feel scared and still move forward. You can feel frustrated and still maintain your focus. You become someone who experiences the full range of human emotions without being at the mercy of any of them. The hidden power of mental movies. Your brain has a superpower that most people never fully utilize. It can't tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This isn't motivational nonsense. It's neuroscientific fact. When you visualize yourself performing an action in rich detail, your brain fires the exact same neural pathways as when you actually perform that action. The motor cortex activates, the visual centers light up, the emotional systems engage. All of it happens as if the experience were real. This is why elite athletes spend hours mentally rehearsing their performances. Why top surgeons visualize complex procedures before entering the operating room. Why the most successful people in every field use visualization as a cornerstone of their mental training. But most people completely misunderstand visualization. They think it's about daydreaming or wishful thinking. They close their eyes, create a vague mental image of success, and wonder why nothing changes in their actual life. Real visualization is a precise, systematic mental skill that requires training, focus, and specific techniques. When done correctly, it literally rewires your brain for success by creating neural pathways that make your desired outcomes feel familiar, natural, and inevitable. The power of visualization lies in its ability to program your unconscious mind with new patterns of success. Remember, your unconscious mind runs 95% of your daily behaviors. It's constantly scanning your environment for opportunities and threats based on patterns it recognizes. When you consistently visualize yourself succeeding in specific scenarios, you're teaching your unconscious to recognize and move toward those opportunities in real life. Effective visualization requires all 5 senses, not just visual imagery. Most people try to visualize by creating mental pictures alone, but the brain responds much more powerfully when you engage every sensory channel. When visualizing your ideal future, you need to see the specific details, hear the sounds, feel the physical sensations in your body, even incorporate smell and taste when relevant. The more sensory channels you activate, the more real the experience becomes to your brain. One of the most powerful techniques is what I call memory creation. Instead of visualizing your goals as something you hope to achieve in the future, you visualize them as memories of experiences you've already had. You imagine looking back on your success from a point in the future, remembering how it felt to achieve your goals, how you overcame challenges, how proud and grateful you felt. This tricks your brain into believing success isn't just possible. It's inevitable. It feels like it already happened. Timing matters for visualization. Your brain is most receptive to new programming during what are called theta brainwave states. These occur naturally when you're deeply relaxed, just before falling asleep, or immediately upon waking. During these windows, your conscious mind is less active, allowing your visualizations to bypass mental resistance and install directly into your unconscious programming. 5 minutes of visualization during these golden windows is worth 30 minutes at other times of day. But visualization alone isn't enough. You must combine mental rehearsal with strong, positive emotions. Emotion is the glue that makes neural pathways stick. When you visualize success while feeling genuine excitement, gratitude, joy, and confidence, you create much stronger neural connections than if you visualize with a neutral emotional state. Your brain literally releases the same neurochemicals during vivid positive visualization as it would during actual positive experiences. You're giving your brain a preview of success, and it responds by preparing you to achieve it. Advanced practitioners use what I call three-dimensional mental environments. Instead of creating linear mental movies, they create complete environments they can explore from multiple angles and perspectives. They might visualize their ideal day from the moment they wake up, experiencing every detail as if they're living it right now. They see themselves making confident decisions, handling challenges with ease, interacting successfully with others, feeling deeply fulfilled by their achievements. Here's what most people miss. Visualize the process, not just the outcome. While it's important to see yourself having achieved your goals, it's equally important to mentally rehearse the daily actions, habits, and decisions that lead to those outcomes. Visualize yourself making difficult choices with ease, staying disciplined when motivation dips, bouncing back quickly from setbacks, consistently taking the actions that successful people take. By the time you face these situations in real life, your brain recognizes them as familiar territory. You can also use mental rehearsal to prepare for specific challenging situations. Got an important presentation coming up, a difficult conversation, a performance that matters. Visualize every aspect of that experience. See yourself walking in with confidence, feeling calm and prepared, delivering your message clearly and powerfully, handling unexpected questions with grace, achieving the outcome you desire. By the time you face the real situation, your brain has already done it dozens of times. It feels like familiar ground instead of terrifying unknown territory. The key to making visualization work is consistency and specificity. Vague, occasional mental images have little impact, but 15 to 20 minutes of detailed, emotionally charged visualization every day for several weeks creates measurable changes in your brain structure and dramatically increases your probability of success. You're not just imagining success. You're literally training your mind the same way an athlete trains their body. Through consistent, focused repetition of the skills and experiences you want to master. The habits running your life on autopilot. Let's talk about something most people never think about. Your life right now is essentially the sum total of your habits. Not just your physical habits, though those matter too, but your mental habits. The patterns of thinking that run automatically in the background of your mind, shaping your reality moment by moment, day by day. The way you respond to stress, what your mind gravitates toward when it wanders, how you interpret setbacks, the words you use in your internal dialogue, whether you focus on problems or solutions as your default mode. These habitual patterns are literally creating the life you're experiencing right now. Most people think habits are just physical behaviors, brushing teeth, exercising, eating certain foods. But your most powerful habits are mental, and they're running on autopilot without you even knowing it. The habit of catastrophizing every uncertainty. The habit of interpreting challenges as personal attacks instead of neutral obstacles. The habit of rehearsing worst-case scenarios instead of best-case outcomes. The habit of comparing yourself to others instead of measuring your own progress. These mental habits are operating in the background 24/7, creating your emotional state, determining your energy level, and ultimately producing your results. Neuroscience has revealed why changing ingrained patterns feels so difficult. Every habit exists as a neurological loop with three parts: a cue that triggers the habit, the routine, or behavior itself, and the reward that reinforces the pattern. Your brain loves habits because they conserve mental energy. Once a pattern becomes automatic, your brain can run it without conscious effort, freeing up cognitive resources for other tasks. It's incredibly efficient, but it also means you can end up running patterns that actively work against what you want. Here's the crucial insight. You can hack your own habit loops by identifying the cues and rewards, then consciously installing new routines. Let's say you have a mental habit of worst-case scenario thinking whenever you face uncertainty. The cue is any situation where you don't know what's going to happen. The routine is imagining everything that could go wrong. The reward is the illusion that you're somehow protecting yourself by being prepared for disaster, even though this habit actually makes you less capable of handling challenges effectively. To change this pattern, you keep the same cue and reward, but install a new routine. When you notice uncertainty triggering your catastrophic thinking, you consciously choose to visualize positive outcomes instead. You ask yourself empowering questions like, what's the best thing that could happen here? How might this turn out even better than I expect? What opportunities might be hidden in this situation? You still get the reward of feeling prepared, but now you're programming your mind for success instead of failure. The most powerful mental habit you can develop is the habit of conscious choice. Most people react automatically to their thoughts and emotions, but you can train yourself to pause between stimulus and response. When a limiting thought arises, instead of automatically believing it or being controlled by it, you pause and ask, is this thought helpful? Is it even true? What would be a more empowering way to think about this? This simple pause creates the space for you to choose your response instead of reacting on autopilot. One of the most transformative mental habits is reframing. Every situation that occurs in your life is neutral until you assign meaning to it. The meaning you assign determines your emotional response, your energy level, and your actions. You can develop the automatic habit of looking for empowering interpretations of every experience. When something doesn't go as planned, instead of automatically thinking, this is a disaster, you train yourself to automatically ask, how can I use this? What's this teaching me? How might this redirect me toward something even better? Your morning mental routine is perhaps the most important habit you can establish because it sets the tone for your entire day. Most people wake up and immediately grab their phones, flooding their minds with other people's agendas, problems, and dramas. But you can create a morning pattern that programs your mind for success from the moment you wake up. Spend the first 15 minutes of your day in gratitude. Visualize your goals. Set intentions for how you want to feel and what you want to accomplish. This isn't woo-woo. It's strategic mental programming. Breaking negative mental habits requires what psychologists call pattern interruption. The moment you catch yourself engaging in a disempowering mental pattern, you must do something completely different to break the neural loop. Some people use physical movement, jumping jacks, push-ups, anything that shifts their state. Others use verbal interruptions, saying stop or cancel that out loud. The key is interrupting the pattern before it gains momentum and becomes a full-blown emotional spiral. Mental hygiene is just as important as physical hygiene, but most people never think about it. Just like you wouldn't go days without showering, you shouldn't go days without cleaning your mental space. This means regularly examining your thoughts, questioning beliefs that aren't serving you, and consciously choosing what information and influences you allow into your mind. You become extremely selective about what you read, watch, listen to, and discuss, because you understand that everything you expose your mind to is programming your unconscious. One powerful habit is the end-of-day review. Before sleep, spend 5 minutes reflecting on your mental performance throughout the day. What thoughts served you well? Which mental patterns held you back? What emotional reactions were you proud of? What would you handle differently tomorrow? This habit of self-reflection accelerates your mental development because you're constantly learning from your experiences instead of just unconsciously repeating them. The ultimate goal is developing what neuroscientists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to consciously shift between different mental strategies depending on what the situation requires. Instead of being stuck in one way of thinking, you develop a mental toolkit you can access at will. Facing a problem? Shift into analytical mode. Feeling stressed? Shift into calming mode. Pursuing a goal? Shift into focused action mode. This mental agility separates peak performers from everyone else. Building a mind that doesn't break. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or emotionless. It's not about suppressing feelings or pretending difficulties don't affect you. It's about developing the ability to maintain your center, your clarity, and your forward momentum regardless of what life throws at you. Resilient people don't experience fewer setbacks than others. They just recover faster and use challenges as fuel for growth rather than reasons to give up. The foundation of mental resilience is understanding that you are not your circumstances. Your external situation is simply data, information about what's happening around you. But your internal state, your peace of mind, your sense of purpose, your confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes, that's completely under your control. When you truly internalize this distinction, you become virtually unbreakable. Nothing outside of you has the power to defeat you. Resilience is built through what psychologists call stress inoculation. Just like your immune system becomes stronger when exposed to manageable doses of challenges, your mind becomes stronger when exposed to difficulties you can successfully navigate. Every time you face adversity and work through it, you build evidence that you're capable of handling hard things. Your brain literally rewires itself to associate challenges with growth opportunities rather than threats. One of the most powerful resilience-building practices is cognitive reappraisal, the ability to consciously reinterpret challenging situations in ways that strengthen you rather than undermine you. When facing a setback, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How is this happening for me?" Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence you should quit, you see them as proof you're pushing beyond your comfort zone into growth territory. The most resilient people have developed what researchers call an internal locus of control. They believe their actions, decisions, and responses have far more influence over their outcomes than external circumstances or luck. When things go well, they take responsibility for the actions that created that success. When things go poorly, they take responsibility for what they can learn and how they can improve, rather than blaming external factors they can't control. This isn't about denying that external factors exist or matter. It's about focusing your mental energy on what you can actually influence. Mental resilience requires emotional regulation skills that allow you to experience strong emotions without being overwhelmed by them. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb. It means learning to feel whatever you're feeling fully, while maintaining your ability to think clearly and make wise decisions. You can feel angry about an injustice while choosing to respond strategically rather than reactively. You can feel disappointed about a setback while immediately focusing on your next move forward. One of the most important resilience skills is psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt your mental approach based on what the situation requires rather than rigidly sticking to one way of thinking. Sometimes, resilience means pushing through discomfort with determination. Other times, it means accepting what you can't change and redirecting your energy toward what you can control. The wisdom is knowing which approach serves you best in any given moment. Resilient people have learned to separate their identity from their results. They understand that failing at something doesn't make them a failure any more than succeeding at something makes them inherently superior to others. They define themselves by their values, their effort, their growth, and their contribution, not by external achievements or setbacks. This psychological separation protects their self-worth during difficult times and prevents success from creating arrogance. Mental strength training is just as important as physical strength training, but most people never think to exercise their mind systematically. Mental strength training involves deliberately putting yourself in challenging situations where you can practice staying calm, focused, and solution-oriented under pressure. This might mean taking on projects that push your capabilities, having difficult conversations you've been avoiding, or facing fears that have been limiting your growth. One of the most powerful resilience frameworks is what psychologist Dr. Elena Foster calls the growth orientation. People with a growth orientation believe their abilities, intelligence, and talents can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. When they face challenges, they see opportunities to become stronger and more capable. People with a fixed orientation believe their abilities are set in stone, so challenges feel like threats rather than opportunities. Resilient people have also mastered temporal perspective. They understand that all emotional states are temporary, that all challenges eventually pass, and that time has a way of putting things in perspective. When facing immediate difficulties, they consciously zoom out and imagine how they'll view the current situation 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years from now. This perspective helps them avoid making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. The ultimate expression of mental resilience is what researchers call post-traumatic growth, the ability to not just recover from adversity, but to become stronger, wiser, and more capable because of difficult experiences. Studies show that people who develop post-traumatic growth often emerge from challenges with greater self-confidence, deeper relationships, clearer priorities, and a stronger sense of what really matters. They learn to see struggles not as evidence of weakness, but as proof of their strength and capacity for growth. Facing fear and taking action. Anyway, fear is not your enemy. Let's get that straight right now. Fear is simply your brain's alarm system trying to protect you from perceived danger. The problem is that your ancient survival programming hasn't updated to distinguish between real physical threats and psychological challenges. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm center, responds to the possibility of public embarrassment, financial loss, or social rejection with the same neurochemical response it would trigger if you were facing a physical predator. Same cortisol spike, same adrenaline rush, same fight or flight activation. Understanding this biological reality is the first step toward developing a healthy relationship with fear. The biggest lie ever told about successful people is that they don't experience fear. Every single person who's ever achieved anything significant has had to face fear, doubt, and uncertainty. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to take action despite fear. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling fear and moving forward anyway. Most people try to wait until they feel ready, confident, and fear-free before taking action toward their goals. But that's backwards. Confidence doesn't create action. Action creates confidence. Every time you do something that scares you and survive the experience, you build evidence that you're more capable than your fear suggested. Your brain literally rewires itself to associate challenge with growth rather than danger. This is why the most confident people are usually those who face the most fears and take an action despite uncertainty. They've proven to themselves over and over that they can handle uncomfortable situations. Fear serves an important evolutionary function, but in modern life, it often prevents us from pursuing the very experiences that would make us happiest and most fulfilled. Here's something worth considering. The things you're most afraid of are usually the things most worth doing. Fear is often a compass pointing toward your growth edge, toward the experiences that would expand your capabilities and transform your life. When you learn to interpret fear as excitement about your potential rather than evidence you should retreat, everything shifts. One of the most powerful fear-conquering techniques is gradual exposure. Instead of trying to overcome your biggest fears all at once, you gradually expose yourself to increasingly challenging versions of what scares you. Terrified of public speaking? Start by speaking up more in small group conversations. Then volunteer to give a toast at a family gathering. Then speak at a small community meeting. Gradually build up to larger audiences. Each successful experience reduces the fear response and builds confidence for the next level. The practice of worst-case scenario planning can actually reduce fear rather than increase it. Most fear is fear of the unknown. When you take time to specifically identify what you're afraid might happen and create concrete plans for how you'd handle each scenario, the fear loses much of its power. You realize that even your worst-case scenarios are usually manageable, and having a plan makes you feel prepared rather than helpless. Many people are paralyzed by perfectionism, which is really just fear of failure disguised as high standards. They postpone action until they can guarantee a perfect outcome, which means they never act at all. But perfection isn't just impossible, it's counterproductive. Progress requires experimentation, learning from mistakes, and constant adjustment based on feedback. The goal isn't avoiding all mistakes. It's making mistakes quickly, learning from them rapidly, and iterating toward success. Fear of judgment from others keeps more people stuck than almost any other factor. But here's the reality. Most people are far too busy worrying about their own lives to spend much time judging yours. And even if they do judge you, their opinions have absolutely no power over your actual outcomes unless you give them that power. The people whose opinions truly matter will respect you more for pursuing your dreams than for playing it safe to avoid criticism. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a prerequisite for success. Every person you admire has failed far more often than they've succeeded. The difference is they view failure as feedback, not as evidence they should give up. They understand that failure is the price of admission for any worthwhile endeavor, not a sign they're not cut out for success. Here's a powerful technique. Imagine yourself 5 years from now looking back on your current situation. What would your future self want you to do? What actions would they take? How would they handle the fears you're experiencing right now? What advice would they give you? This perspective helps you make decisions based on long-term fulfillment rather than short-term comfort. Taking massive action requires developing what psychologists call an action bias. Instead of overthinking, overanalyzing, and overplanning, you develop the habit of taking imperfect action quickly. You understand that action, even imperfect action, provides real-world feedback that no amount of thinking can replace. You can always course correct along the way, but you can't steer a parked car. Here's the ultimate truth about fear. Your comfort zone isn't actually comfortable. Staying where you are, avoiding challenges, playing it safe might feel comfortable short-term, but it leads to long-term regret, unfulfillment, and the gnawing sense you're not living up to your potential. The temporary discomfort of pushing through fear is nothing compared to the permanent discomfort of knowing you settled for less than you were capable of achieving. The bridge between knowing and becoming. Everything we've talked about so far comes down to one fundamental truth. Consistent practice is the bridge between knowing and being, between understanding and mastery, between dreaming and achieving. You can have all the knowledge in the world about how your mind works, but without consistent practice of these mental mastery techniques, nothing in your life will actually change. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. It's just information taking up space in your head. The transformation you're looking for doesn't happen overnight. Your current mental patterns, emotional reactions, and behavioral habits have been reinforced thousands of times over many years. They're deeply carved into your neural pathways, your biochemistry, your unconscious programming. Expecting to change them with a few days or weeks of effort is like expecting to develop the body of a professional athlete with a handful of workouts. It's not realistic. Real. Change requires consistent, patient, persistent practice over time. But here's what's genuinely exciting. Every single day you practice mental mastery techniques, you're literally rewiring your brain. Every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you're strengthening neural pathways that serve your success. Every time you manage your emotional state consciously instead of reacting automatically, you're building emotional intelligence and resilience. Every time you focus your attention deliberately instead of letting it wander randomly, you're developing mental discipline. The compound effect applies to mental development just as powerfully as it applies to financial investment. Small, consistent improvements in your mindset, focus, emotional regulation, and belief systems create exponential results over time. A 1% improvement in your mental game every day leads to being 37 times better over the course of a year. Most people underestimate what they can achieve in a year and overestimate what they can achieve in a day. The key is focusing on consistency rather than intensity. Creating a sustainable daily practice requires what researchers call implementation intentions. Instead of vague goals like, "I want to think more positively," you create specific, measurable practices. Every morning at 7 a.m., I will spend 15 minutes visualizing my goals and feeling grateful for my progress. The more specific your implementation intentions, the more likely you are to follow through consistently, because your brain knows exactly what to do and when to do it. The most successful people across every field have morning rituals that set them up for mental success throughout the day. Your first hour awake is neurologically the most impressionable time of day. Your brain is transitioning from theta waves to beta waves, making it highly receptive to new programming. How you use this window determines whether you start your day feeling empowered and focused or reactive and scattered. A powerful morning practice might include 5 minutes of gratitude reflection, 10 minutes of goal visualization, 5 minutes of intention setting for how you want to feel and what you want to accomplish. This isn't luxury, it's necessity if you want to perform at your peak. Tracking your mental practices is just as important as tracking physical fitness or financial progress. What gets measured gets managed. Keep a simple journal where you record your daily mental training activities. Did you catch limiting thoughts and choose more empowering ones? Did you manage your emotional state effectively during challenging situations? Did you maintain focus on your priorities despite distractions? This self-monitoring accelerates your progress by increasing your awareness of patterns and celebrating improvements. Your environment plays a crucial role in supporting consistent mental practice. Your surroundings should support the mental habits you want to develop and eliminate triggers for patterns you want to change. This might mean creating a dedicated space for visualization and meditation, removing apps that hijack your attention, surrounding yourself with books and materials that reinforce positive thinking, joining communities of people who are also committed to mental mastery. One of the biggest obstacles to consistent practice is the perfectionism trap. Many people start strong, miss a day or two, then abandon their practice entirely because they feel like they've already failed. But consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means getting back on track quickly when you fall off. A professional athlete who misses one workout doesn't quit training forever. They simply show up for the next one. Develop the same mindset about your mental training. The practice of mental rehearsal should become as automatic as brushing your teeth. Every night before sleep, spend a few minutes reviewing your mental performance during the day. What thoughts, emotions, and reactions served you well? What patterns would you like to adjust tomorrow? How can you handle similar situations more skillfully in the future? Then visualize tomorrow going exactly as you want it to go. See yourself thinking clearly, feeling confident, responding wisely to challenges, moving closer to your goals. As you develop consistency in your mental practices, you'll notice your external reality starts shifting to match your internal transformation. Opportunities you previously wouldn't have noticed start appearing. People respond to you differently because you're showing up differently. Challenges that used to overwhelm you feel manageable because you've developed the mental tools to handle them. This isn't magic. It's the natural result of upgrading your mental programming. The ultimate goal of all these practices is developing what researchers call self-directed neuroplasticity, the ability to consciously and deliberately rewire your own brain to support the life you want to create. You become the architect of your own mental programming, the director of your own thoughts and emotions, the creator of your own reality. This level of mental mastery doesn't happen overnight, but every day you practice, you move closer to becoming the person who naturally thinks, feels, and acts in ways that create the life you genuinely desire. Remember, your mind is your most powerful tool, but like any tool, its effectiveness depends on how skillfully you use it. The techniques you've learned aren't just concepts to understand. They're skills to develop through consistent practice. Your future self is counting on you to do the work, to show up every day, to choose growth over comfort, action over hesitation, mastery over mediocrity. The person you're capable of becoming is waiting for you on the other side of consistent practice. The conversation that shapes everything. The conversation you have with yourself every single day is the most important conversation you'll ever have. Right now, as you're reading these words, there's a voice in your head commenting, analyzing, maybe judging, comparing, predicting. This inner voice never stops talking. It's been with you since childhood, shaping your self-concept, your confidence, your decisions, and ultimately your entire life experience. Yet most people never learn to consciously direct this internal conversation. Your inner dialogue is like having a permanent roommate in your head who never leaves and never stops talking. The question is, what kind of roommate do you have? Is your inner voice supportive, encouraging, empowering, or is it critical, doubtful, constantly pointing out your flaws and limitations? For most people, their inner dialogue is dominated by what psychologists call the inner critic, a harsh internal voice that judges everything they do and constantly tells them they're not good enough. This inner critic developed during childhood as an internalized version of all the critical voices you heard from parents, teachers, peers, society. Every time someone told you to be realistic, criticized your performance, compared you unfavorably to others, or expressed disappointment, that voice got recorded and integrated into your internal operating system. Now it plays on repeat, undermining your confidence, second-guessing your decisions, keeping you stuck in patterns of self-doubt and limitation. But here's what changes everything. You are not that voice. You are the observer of that voice. You are the consciousness that can hear the inner dialogue and choose whether to believe it, ignore it, or replace it with something more empowering. This realization is the beginning of mental freedom. When you understand you can observe your thoughts without being controlled by them, you reclaim your power to direct your mental experience. The first step in mastering your inner dialogue is developing metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. Start paying attention to the tone, content, and patterns of your inner voice throughout the day. Notice when it's supportive versus when it's critical. Observe how it responds to challenges, opportunities, mistakes, successes. Most people are completely unconscious of their inner dialogue, letting it run on autopilot their entire lives. One of the most powerful techniques for transforming inner dialogue is cognitive restructuring. This involves consciously examining your automatic thoughts and replacing them with more accurate, balanced, and empowering alternatives. When you catch your inner critic saying, "I always mess everything up," you pause and ask, "Is this actually true? Can I think of times when I've handled things well? What would be a more accurate and helpful way to think about this?" The practice of positive self-talk isn't about lying to yourself or pretending everything's perfect. It's about becoming your own best coach and supporter instead of your own worst enemy. Imagine if you had a coach who constantly criticized you, focused on your weaknesses, predicted your failure, reminded you of every mistake you'd ever made. You'd fire that coach immediately. Yet most people allow their inner critic to treat them this way every single day. Effective self-talk follows specific principles that maximize its impact. First, it should be specific rather than general. Instead of, "I'm terrible at this," you might say, "I'm still learning this skill and I'm improving with practice." Second, it should focus on what you can control rather than what you can't. Instead of, "I hope this works out," you might say, "I'm going to give my best effort and handle whatever happens." Third, it should be present or future-focused rather than dwelling on past mistakes. One transformative technique is the best friend method. Whenever you notice your inner critic being harsh or judgmental, ask yourself, what would I say to my best friend if they were in this situation? How would I encourage someone I care about? Then give yourself that same compassion and understanding. Most people are incredibly kind to others while being brutal to themselves. Learning to treat yourself with the kindness you show others can revolutionize your self-relationship. The language you use in your inner dialogue literally shapes your neurology and your experience. Words have power because they trigger specific neurochemical responses. When you tell yourself, "I have to do this," you create stress and resistance. When you tell yourself, "I get to do this," you create gratitude and enthusiasm. When you say, "This is impossible," you prime your brain to look for evidence of why it won't work. When you say, "This is challenging, but I can figure it out," you prime your brain to look for solutions. Another powerful practice is self-compassionate self-talk. This involves treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and encouragement you'd offer a good friend going through a difficult time. When you make a mistake, instead of berating yourself, you acknowledge that everyone makes mistakes, that this is part of being human, and that you can learn from this experience and do better next time. Reframing is particularly powerful for transforming inner dialogue. Every situation can be interpreted multiple ways, and the interpretation you choose determines your emotional response and actions. If you lose a job, your inner critic might say, "I'm a failure, I'll never find anything good again." But you could reframe this as, "This is an opportunity to find something even better suited to my talents. This happened for a reason, and something amazing is coming." Creating empowering mantras and affirmations can help reprogram your default self-talk patterns. These should be personally meaningful statements that contradict your specific limiting beliefs and reinforce the identity you want to develop. Instead of generic affirmations, create specific statements like, "I'm becoming more confident and capable every day," or "I trust my ability to handle whatever challenges come my way," or "I deserve success and happiness as much as anyone else." The practice of inner dialogue journaling can accelerate your awareness and transformation. Each evening, write down examples of your inner dialogue from that day. What did your inner voice say during challenging moments? How did it respond to successes and setbacks? What patterns do you notice? What alternative self-talk would have served you better? This practice increases your consciousness of automatic thought patterns and helps you design more empowering internal conversations. Advanced practitioners develop what could be called an inner council of advisors. Instead of just one inner voice, they consciously cultivate different internal perspectives they can access, depending on what they need. They might have an inner coach for motivation, an inner strategist for problem solving, an inner wise mentor for perspective and patience, an inner cheerleader for celebration and confidence. This allows them to always have access to the kind of internal support that serves their highest good. The ultimate goal of mastering your inner dialogue is becoming your own greatest ally instead of your own worst enemy. When your internal conversation is consistently supportive, encouraging, solution-focused, and empowering, you become unstoppable. You develop unshakable self-confidence because your inner voice constantly reinforces your capabilities. You recover quickly from setbacks because your self-talk helps you learn and grow. You take more risks and pursue bigger goals because your inner dialogue supports your dreams rather than talking you out of them. Protecting your mental energy like it's gold, mental energy is just as real and important as physical energy. Yet most people have no understanding of how to manage, conserve, or optimize it. Your brain consumes approximately 20% of your total daily energy, even though it's only about 2% of your body weight. Every decision you make, every problem you solve, every emotion you regulate, every distraction you resist, all of it depletes your mental energy reserves. Understanding how to maximize mental energy is the key to sustained high performance in every area of life. Most people operate in a constant state of mental fatigue without even realizing it. They wake up tired, struggle to focus throughout the day, feel drained by simple decisions, collapse into mindless activities in the evening. They assume this is just how life feels. They never recognize that mental exhaustion is largely preventable through proper mental energy management. The concept of decision fatigue reveals why so many high-achieving people seem to lose their willpower as the day progresses. Every choice you make, from what to wear, to what to eat, to how to respond to emails, uses up finite mental resources. This is why successful people like tech entrepreneurs and innovators famously wore the same outfit every day. They understood that preserving mental energy for important decisions requires eliminating unnecessary choices wherever possible. Your brain operates in different states throughout the day, each optimized for different types of mental work. Understanding these natural rhythms allows you to schedule your most important cognitive tasks during your peak mental energy windows. For most people, complex analytical thinking is best performed during the first few hours after waking, when mental energy is highest. Creative tasks often flow better during slightly lower energy states when the mind is more relaxed and associative. The practice of deep work, as defined by researcher Dr. Nathan Pierce, is the ability to focus on cognitively demanding tasks for extended periods without distraction. This skill is becoming increasingly rare in our hyper-connected world, but it's also becoming increasingly valuable. Deep work produces disproportionate results because it allows you to create at your highest level, solve complex problems, and produce work that can't be easily replicated. Creating the optimal environment for peak mental performance requires eliminating what researchers call attention residue. Every time you switch between tasks, part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task, reducing your cognitive capacity for the current one. This is why multitasking is actually a myth. Your brain doesn't multitask. It rapidly switches between tasks, and each switch comes with an efficiency cost. True mental optimization requires single tasking with complete focus. Cognitive load theory explains why some mental work feels effortless, while other work feels exhausting. Your working memory can only hold a limited amount of information at one time. When you try to process too much simultaneously, your cognitive system becomes overloaded and performance degrades rapidly. Managing cognitive load means breaking complex tasks into smaller components and organizing information in ways that don't overwhelm your mental processing capacity. Nutrition plays a crucial role in mental energy that most people completely underestimate. Your brain runs primarily on glucose, but the quality and timing of that glucose delivery dramatically affects cognitive performance. Stable blood sugar levels support sustained mental energy, while blood sugar spikes and crashes create corresponding energy fluctuations. Eating foods with a low glycemic index and consuming regular balanced meals helps maintain consistent mental energy. The relationship between physical exercise and mental performance is profound and scientifically documented. Exercise increases production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which stimulates growth of new neural connections and improves cognitive function. Even short bursts of physical activity can immediately enhance mental clarity, creativity, and focus. Many of history's greatest thinkers were known for taking regular walks to stimulate their mental processes. Sleep quality is perhaps the most undervalued factor in mental energy optimization. During sleep, your brain clears metabolic waste, consolidates memories, and restores cognitive resources. Even small sleep deficits accumulate over time, creating significant impairments in attention, decision-making, emotional regulation, and creative thinking. Prioritizing sleep isn't about being lazy. It's about maximizing your mental performance capacity. The practice of mental recovery is just as important as mental exertion for sustaining high performance over time. Just as athletes incorporate rest and recovery into their training regimens, peak mental performers build deliberate recovery periods into their schedules. This might include meditation sessions, time in nature, creative activities that feel like play, or simply complete disconnection from information and stimulation. Mental burnout is real, and prevention is far easier than recovery. Attention management is more important than time management in today's information-rich environment. You can have all the time in the world, but if your attention is scattered, fragmented, and constantly hijacked by distractions, you won't accomplish anything meaningful. Developing the ability to control your attention deliberately, maintain focus for extended periods, and quickly redirect your mental energy when necessary is the ultimate productivity skill. The phenomenon of flow states represents the peak of human mental performance. Flow occurs when you're completely absorbed in a challenging activity that matches your skill level, when self-consciousness disappears, and when you perform at levels that surprise even yourself. While flow can't be forced, You can create conditions that make it more likely. Clear goals, immediate feedback, elimination of distractions, and tasks that stretch your abilities without overwhelming them. Technology can either enhance or destroy mental energy depending on how it's used. Digital devices can serve as cognitive tools that augment your capabilities, but they can also become sources of constant distraction and mental fragmentation. Developing digital wisdom means learning to use technology intentionally to support your cognitive goals, rather than letting it hijack your attention and deplete your mental resources. The concept of energy management extends beyond just mental energy to include emotional, physical, and spiritual energy. These different energy systems are interconnected. Emotional turbulence drains mental energy. Physical fatigue impairs cognitive function. Lack of purpose creates spiritual exhaustion that undermines everything else. Peak performers understand that optimizing mental energy requires a holistic approach. A mental energy audit is a practice where you track your energy levels throughout the day to identify patterns and optimize your schedule. Notice when you feel most alert and focused versus when you feel sluggish and scattered. Pay attention to which activities energize you versus which drain you. Which environments support your best thinking? Which types of decisions feel effortless versus exhausting? This data allows you to design a life that works with your natural energy patterns rather than against them. The ultimate goal of mental energy optimization isn't just accomplishing more, it's accomplishing what matters most, while feeling energized and engaged rather than drained and depleted. When you master your mental energy, work feels less like work and more like play. You approach challenges with enthusiasm rather than dread. You maintain high performance consistently rather than experiencing constant crashes. You have mental resources available for creativity, relationships, and personal growth, rather than feeling like you're always running on empty. Clarity. Seeing through the mental fog. Mental clarity is the foundation of all effective decision-making, problem-solving, and action-taking. When your mind is clear, you can see situations accurately, evaluate options objectively, and choose responses that align with your values and long-term goals. When your mind is cloudy, confused, or overwhelmed, even simple decisions become difficult, and you're likely to make choices you'll later regret. Most people live in a constant state of mental fog without realizing it. Their minds are cluttered with worry about the future, regret about the past, information overload, conflicting priorities, and emotional turbulence. This mental static makes it nearly impossible to think clearly, see opportunities, or access intuitive wisdom. They're like someone trying to navigate through a storm with a dirty windshield, struggling to see clearly enough to make good decisions. Mental clarity begins with what teachers call beginner's mind, the ability to approach situations with fresh eyes, free from preconceived notions, past conditioning, and automatic assumptions. Most of the time, you don't see reality directly. You see your interpretation of reality, filtered through your beliefs, expectations, fears, and past experiences. Beginner's mind allows you to see what's actually happening, rather than what you think should be happening. One of the biggest obstacles to mental clarity is cognitive overload. Your conscious mind can only process a limited amount of information at any given time. When you try to think about too many things simultaneously, your cognitive system becomes overwhelmed and your thinking becomes muddled. Mental clarity requires learning to focus on one thing at a time with complete attention. The practice of mental decluttering is essential for developing clarity. Just as physical clutter makes it difficult to find what you need in your environment, mental clutter makes it difficult to access your best thinking. Mental decluttering involves regularly clearing your mind of unnecessary thoughts, worries, and information that don't serve your current priorities and goals. Emotional clarity is a crucial component of overall mental clarity. Strong emotions can cloud judgment and make it difficult to think rationally. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It means learning to feel your emotions fully while maintaining your ability to think clearly. When you're angry, you can acknowledge the anger without letting it control your decisions. When you're afraid, you can feel the fear without letting it paralyze you. The technique of perspective taking dramatically enhances mental clarity by allowing you to see situations from multiple viewpoints. When you're stuck in one perspective, you can only see a limited range of options. But when you consciously shift perspectives, considering how the situation looks from another person's view, how you'll see it a year from now, or how someone you admire would approach it, you often discover possibilities that weren't visible from your original vantage point. Questions are one of the most powerful tools for developing mental clarity. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you ask yourself. Poor questions generate poor answers and keep you stuck in confusion. Powerful questions cut through mental fog and direct your attention toward useful information and productive solutions. Instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" you might ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to become stronger?" Meditation is perhaps the most reliable method for developing sustained mental clarity. It teaches you to observe your thoughts without being caught up in them, to notice when your mind becomes agitated, and to return to centered awareness. Mental clarity requires learning to distinguish between facts and interpretations. Most of what you think are facts are actually your interpretations, filtered through your beliefs and emotional state. Learning to separate what actually occurred from your story about it is crucial for making decisions based on reality, rather than fiction. Single tasking is essential for mental clarity. When you try to do multiple things at once, your attention becomes fragmented and your thinking becomes shallow. True clarity requires the ability to focus completely on one thing at a time. Sustaining mastery through life's storms. Mental mastery isn't a destination. It's an ongoing practice that must be maintained continuously, especially when life presents inevitable challenges and setbacks. The true test isn't how well you perform when everything's smooth, but how quickly you return to your center when life knocks you off balance. During crisis periods, your brain naturally defaults to your most ingrained patterns. This is why people often revert to old behaviors during stress, even after years of development work. The time to strengthen your foundation is before the storm arrives, not during it. Developing psychological anti-fragility is the ultimate goal. Anti-fragile people don't just survive stress. They become stronger because of it. They use setbacks as opportunities for growth, transform obstacles into advantages, and emerge from difficulties more capable than before. The support system you build is crucial for long-term sustainability. Surrounding yourself with people who understand your commitment to mental growth makes it easier to maintain practices during difficult times. When mental mastery becomes part of who you are rather than just something you do, you're much more likely to maintain these practices even during challenges. You begin to see difficulties as opportunities to live your values rather than threats to your well-being. The ultimate measure of sustained mastery is not the absence of difficulties, but your ability to maintain your center, values, and forward momentum regardless of external circumstances. You know you've achieved true mastery when challenges become interesting puzzles rather than threats. Your moment is now. We've covered massive ground together. You've learned about unconscious programming, the science of rewiring your brain, the power of beliefs, techniques for managing thoughts and emotions, and practices that sustain mastery over time. But all of this knowledge is worthless unless you take action to implement it in your life, starting right now. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. Until you begin practicing these techniques consistently, nothing will change. Your brain will keep running the same old programs, creating the same old results. The most important moment is this moment right now, not tomorrow when you feel more motivated, not next week when life calms down. Right now, because the mind that got you here cannot take you where you want to go. Your transformation doesn't require perfect conditions or unlimited time. It starts with small, consistent actions that compound over time. Catching one limiting thought and choosing a more empowering one. Taking one deep breath before reacting emotionally. Spending 5 minutes visualizing your goals. You have a choice to make right now. You can return to your old patterns, or you can decide that this is the moment everything changes. You can become the architect of your own mind rather than the victim of unconscious programming. The person you're capable of becoming isn't fantasy. They're a real possibility inside you right now, waiting for you to develop the mental skills that will bring them to life. Your future self is counting on you to make this decision today. 5 years from now, you'll either be grateful you started this journey or regret that you continued living as a prisoner in your own mind. Starting your mental transformation requires 3 commitments. First, commit to daily mental training. Choose specific times each day for visualization, meditation, or other mental training activities. Start with just 10 to 15 minutes. Second, commit to conscious choice-making throughout your day. Every moment offers the opportunity to choose empowering thoughts over limiting ones. Third, commit to continuous learning and growth. Mental mastery is a lifelong journey. Stay curious about new techniques and research. The techniques you've learned work, but only if you work them. They require your commitment, consistency, and faith in the process even when you don't see immediate results. Change happens gradually, then suddenly. Remember that your mind is the most powerful force at your disposal. Everything you've ever achieved started as a thought. When you master your mind, you master your ability to create any life you can imagine. You now possess the knowledge and tools needed to transform your mental experience and your entire life. The only question is whether you'll use them. Your mental transformation starts now. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. Right now, in this moment. Take a deep breath. Make the commitment to mental mastery. Begin the most important journey of your life. The person you're meant to become is waiting for you to take the first step. The life you're meant to live is waiting for you to think the thoughts that create it. Your time is now. Your moment is here. Control your mind, and you will control your world.